Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Pursue the Hunt YouTube channel. I'm Mike Friesen, and today we are going to be looking like a gear review, but we're going to be going over bow hunting setup, specifically with a bow, and then we're going to also do a video on hunting arrow setup as well. So just make sure you hit that subscribe button and like the video. Let us know if you have any comments or questions. We like to answer those too. All right. So what we've got here is this is my hunting bow setup here, and I'll just kind of give you a breakdown top to bottom of the gear that I'm using on the bow and specifically why I've chosen the type of gear and for the environments that I specifically hunt in. So most of my bow hunting is done in the northern regions of British Columbia, Canada, and so the bow I'm using here today is the Elite Synergy bow. It's 33 inches axle to axle, and I shoot a 61 pound draw and 30.5 inch draw length, and so it allows me a large power stroke. So I've kind of got gorilla arms, and that does play to my advantage in the sense I can generate a little bit more speed out of the bow because of my draw length. Now, this is an older model. I believe it's a 2016 model, but I'm also a firm believer in if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that's not anything against the new bows that are coming out. It's what I've been used, what I'm comfortable using. I know my bow really well. It's got a great backstop, so I can hold full draw for a long period of time if I need to, and it's fairly light. So coming down here, our buddy Muck Simons, he actually did a video on this recently about peep size. So peep size here is a 1/4 inch because I use a fairly large housing sight. It gives me a great picture window when I'm hunting. It's not condensed. There isn't a lot of things in the way. I can get a full picture of the target that I'm aiming at. So just to head to his social media page, Muck Simons, and check out that, because the peep diameter needs to match the housing of your bow to get proper peep alignment, so you're not affecting your point of impact of the arrow. So moving down here, we've got the Trophy Ridge React 5 sight, and so we've got, you can see here, 5 pins. And the nice thing about this sight is it's really easy to tune. It's got really bright pins, so as you're losing light, it's even got a light illuminator, pin illuminator. But basically with this sight, once you set it at 20 yards, you can use this knob here to actually drop all of your other pins. Mathematically, they gap themselves. And as long as your bow, I believe, shoots above 265 or 255 feet per second, then you'll be able to get enough gap so that you can, all 5 of your pins ends up being accurate all the way from 20 out to 60 yards. So it's really easy to tune, which is why I like it, and it also shows me a big target picture. Going over to the rest, I use a Trophy Ridge Whisker Biscuit rest. Now, sometimes I get a little flack that, you know, it's really simple, there's more accurate rests out there, blah, blah, blah. You know, the fletching will catch the whiskers and deviate the flight. I just haven't found that to be the case at any point I've been using this rest. You do need the right size of whisker biscuit depending on your size of diameter of arrow. However, after that, I have not found that it's really reduced my arrow speed, has changed flight pattern, or anything of that nature with my arrow coming out of the bow. But what it does do is it allows me to have less mechanical things going on with the bow. So if I'm bow hunting deer, let's say in November, temperatures are rising, falling, freezing, oftentimes I can get even a little bit of buildup on this. Now the nice thing about this rest is I can just crunch it all up, dust it off, and fully functional. Not to say that drop away rests will freeze on you, but they are spring loaded and they do have moving parts, so it can potentially create problems. I'm not saying they do, but it can potentially create problems, and I I just want to eliminate that altogether, so I just use a really simple setup. And until I start missing everything that I'm aiming at, I'm not going to switch. So moving to stabilizers. So I've got a little bit of a longer stabilizer up in the front, it's a 12-inch, and I have an 8-inch in the back. And a buddy of mine up here in Fort St. John, actually, that works at Backcountry, our local hunting shop, builds these stabilizers, and he's quite a bit better of an archer than I am. I'll disclose that with humility. But he is selling these stabilizers called the Golden Sombrero. I'm not exactly sure where he got that name, but we'll leave it at that. But they're carbon fiber, they're very light, they're very stiff, they absorb vibration very well, and they keep the bow very balanced. So I don't use a bow sling, but if I'm holding out here, you can see how well that bow balances in my hand, front to back, with the weight setup that I have on the stabilizers. And this is just my bow holder down here. So top to bottom, that's just essentially my bow setup. I do try to keep it as simple as possible. Now, this is very different than setting it up for, let's say, a target rig. Now, I won't go into depth about a target rig because it's not the topic here today, but you definitely do use different size and diameters of arrows. You'll most likely be using a single pin versus a multi-pin sight, depending on the class of target archery you shoot in, and things like that. So this is built for functionality, and it's not built for just that repetition, indoor, outdoor precision. Although you do have to be accurate. That's not what I'm getting at here, but I'm getting at a little bit more of a simplicity of a setup. Now, looking at types of releases, I brought the one that I use here today for my hunting specifically. I have used, I should say, a hinge release in the past. Now, this Spot Hog Wise Guy, it is a trigger release, but you can set the tension of the trigger. So you can almost use it as a tension release. As you pull into it, my finger will let that trigger off, or you can use it as a strict trigger release. But I've run into situations on occasion where the hinge release didn't go off when I needed it to, and then that was my fault. I wasn't pulling enough into it, but it did cost me an opportunity on a fairly nice deer. And that wasn't the sole reason why I switched. I started out originally with a trigger. I did get some target panic. I switched to the hinge. That got rid of the target panic. I am much more accurate with a trigger now than I was before. So there are definitely pros and cons to both. If you are suffering from target panic, I highly recommend a tension or a hinge release for that. So yeah, so that's just the last piece of the puzzle there. And in terms of bow weight and length for bow hunting, I do have another Elite at home. It's more of a target bow. It's a longer axle to axle, gives me a little bit more stability in my shot, but it is much more cumbersome. You wouldn't think that a 2-inch axle to axle would make a big difference, but it really does. If you're hunting in tree stands, if you're hunting in blinds, your bow hits a lot of things, branches, roofs of the blind, things like that, which you want to be aware of. I think you can go too short as well, because it does create, when you're drawing, that string coming down, it does create a greater angle and could screw up your anchor points a little bit for shooting. So just be aware of that. I find for my height, my draw length, the 33-inch axle to axle bow works really, really well for finding my anchor points, and still isn't too cumbersome out in the field that way. So that's the long and the short of it here. If you're interested in getting into bow hunting, or you already are, or you're new to it and you have some questions, feel free to drop those in the comments. Click subscribe so that you know when we're putting out more great content like we are today. And thanks for watching this particular series in the Hunter Apprentice.